Series 1 of the Scale Up Your Sales and Marketing podcast is powered by Enterprise Nation, providing expert support for small businesses in the UK. Welcome back to the Scale Up Your Sales and Marketing podcast. This episode is episode number 6. It's a marketing one. The title is, Which Touchpoints Does Your Business Need? Over to you, Vic.
Oh, well, this is a question that I get asked quite a lot. And what I do see people doing is doing way too much more than they need to do. And so the aim of the game really with Touchpoints is working out what is the most efficient way for you to market to your audience. So one of those things is to stop trying to be on every social media platform, trying to reach customers every way possible. It's so much more easier on your time, money, energy if you are being more succinct on the platforms that your customers are on. And we've touched on your target audience in previous episodes. But what I do see is sometimes business owners can have a bit of FOMO where they think, oh, hang on a minute, if I'm not on that channel or if I'm not doing that thing, then, you know, I'm missing out and I'm not part of this gang that are doing this thing. And so a lot of people look at what their competitors are doing and think, hang on, I need to be doing that as well. And you don't. So let me just start by going through a definition of a touch point. The definition of touch point is every deliberate method that you choose as a business owner to interact with your prospective customers. Now, two key words stand out for me there. Deliberate, like you get to choose, and it's what you choose, as in you're in the driving seat, you don't have to do everything. Now, most people might have heard this statistic that you really need to hear or see an advert about 7 or 8 times before something really sinks in. And I can put a link to that in the show notes of where the information came from. So that is obviously very different whether, I mean, like Lisa, if you're buying a Ferrari or if you're buying a pen, you know, the amount of touch points that you need is going to be very different, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Ferrari you might have seen as a youngster and you see it, I don't know, on Formula One or out and about at a show and you're like, oh, wow, look at this car. And so you might see Ferrari for 100, 200, 300 touch points before at that point you've made your millions with your business and you're like, do you know what, I'm going to buy the Ferrari because it's been a constant, versus a pen where you're like, I just need a pen, there is a pen shop, I'm going to buy the pen. You don't need 7 or 8 touch points for that, right?
But what colour?
So what we need to consider is that customers need the repetition. Customers need to see things via different touch points, but they don't necessarily need everything. You don't need to be on every single platform. Now, on the Touchpoints marketing website, we have got a great download. It's got a Touchpoints checklist where you can print it out. It's a 1-pager and you can tick which touchpoints you do and which touchpoints you might do in the future. And I know you've done this recently, haven't you, Lisa?
Yeah.
And you said, oh my gosh, I'm doing loads more touch points than I thought. And it's one of those that it's almost like a bit of an audit to say, like, where are we putting ourselves out there? And do we need to be doing all of it? Or are actually there some things that we could be missing and we want to do these things, but we feel like we're spending so much time doing the things we're already doing? We'll put the link in the show notes below. Go and have a look and download that and tick away and see how your business compares and which touch points you could be doing and which you could be dropping off the bottom of the list. So like, oh no, don't want to do that anymore. And I'm going to give you an example in a bit of what we've done at Touchpoints Marketing with our social media and how we've kind of made some changes over time. But before I do that, I've got some data here because I wanted to bring in a bit of statistics about which apps are being used, which are the biggest in terms of downloads, customer spend, and monthly active users. So again, the link will be in the show notes so you can see this as a graphic. And we'll put it on our Instagram as well, which is Scale Up Podcast. So the top 3 social media channels for downloads, number 1 is TikTok, number 2 is Instagram, and number 3 is Facebook. These stats are for Q1 of 2023. The highest in terms of customer spend, again, TikTok is up at the top. It's number 1, followed by YouTube and then followed by Disney. And Disney. So customer spend, it's got to be the Disney channel. It's got to be the spend on the Disney channel. Monthly active users, the highest is Facebook. When we think worldwide monthly active users, number 1 Facebook, number 2 is WhatsApp Messenger. and number 3 is Instagram, all owned by Meta, you'll notice. So yeah, really, really fascinating. It's a great graphic. So if you want to have a look at that, head over to the Instagram. And I think that's really important to put out there, because although these are the highest in terms of monthly spend and downloads and monthly active users, they might not be the touch points that you need for your customers. So I'm going to talk about the AIDA model. If anybody hasn't heard about the AIDA model before, it's AIDA, and it stands for awareness or attention, interest, desire, and action. And it's not something that I've dreamt up. It was actually developed over 100 years ago by an American businessman called Elias St. Elmo Lewis. Now, when we think about the AIDA model, we've got to think about it as like a funnel. So up at the top, we've got a big space that is like attention or awareness. And then the next section down is the interest. The bit kind of in the bottom middle is desire. And the bit of the funnel at the very bottom is the action. When we think about this, taking the customers on a journey, and I bring it into the touchpoints conversation because we need to consider what touchpoints are happening for those customers during that journey and how do they link together. Because there's no point in us just chucking information out on loads of different channels and not considering how they might link for the customer, how the customer journey is impacted by those different touchpoints, and at what part of their journey they're hearing things. And let me give you some examples. With awareness or attention, what the customer needs to know is, what is it? What is the company? What is the product or service? When they come further down the funnel, they're getting to the interest section. And this is where they're starting to think, I like this. I want to find out a bit more. I want to kind of delve around a little bit more and find out, read more stuff that they've been putting out. And then when they get further down the funnel again to the desire section, at this point, they're like, I really want this thing.
I want the pen.
I want the green pen. So they're really thinking like, I've gone past just liking it now. I've got a real desire for this item. Whether I can afford it at this point or not doesn't really come into the equation. And then at the very bottom of the funnel, when we talk about action, they are literally at the point where they're like, I'm getting it. I'm doing this thing. I'm signing up for the emails, or I'm registering my interest, or I'm booking a call. It is the point of the action that takes them over a line. It's like a seesaw. The seesaw is just flipped the other way. So I'm going to give you an example of how this might work in real life. And the example I'm going to give you is an accountant, because as business owners, we know what an accountant does. We know the kind of businesses that they attract. So when we think about the top of the funnel, the attention and awareness, an accountant would probably go networking. They'd do that in person, or they'd do it on Zoom or Teams or other online software. So at that point, they've got two options, because what we want to do is try and create this journey that is simple, effective, automated as possible, and also linked up. So when we think about this, they might be, let's say they're on Zoom, or they're at a networking event in person. On Zoom, there's obviously the opportunity to put a link into the chat. So exactly like you've just said in episode 5, hi, I'm Lisa. I run a company called Find Me the Leads, and this is what I do. And then you would probably say, I'm going to put a link in the chat to this really helpful blog I've just written about blah, blah, blah. So at this point, the accountant would say, here's a blog I've just written about how to file your self-assessment really easily in 3 steps. I mean, I don't know if it's I don't know if it's even possible in 3 steps, but you know where I'm going with it. Really helpful blog. So if they're networking on Zoom, they've said it in their 60 seconds, and then they're putting the link into the chat to go here. Okay. So people might open up that tab, and then it's open for after the networking, or they're having a bit of a look whilst other people are talking, and they're like, oh, right, okay. At the same point, if that accountant is in the room, what they could have is a sheet that's got a few different QR codes with, here's a blog about this, here's a blog about this, here's a blog about this, helpful things. That as they're talking to people and they hear them say, oh, I'm struggling with my self-assessment actually, I've got a blog about that. Just take a picture of this QR code here and it'll give you all the details.
This is really, really brilliant, because I think this builds on what we just talked about in the last episode when we were talking about making an impact face to face. So what you've just described there is an excellent example of preparation.
Oh, yeah.
So planning. So you're not
Yes.
just rocking up at a networking event. So, for example, on Zoom, so I now have a saved email, so an email in my draft folder where I've got all my social media links.
Love it.
So before going on a Zoom call, I already know in my head what link I want to put into the chat. So I think what you're saying here is this is not just a sporadic, this is I am going into this event or into this networking opportunity knowing what messages I want to land with the audience.
Yeah, knowing what messages you want to land, and also knowing where that's going to take them on a journey to the next phase, to the next phase, to the next phase, because otherwise it gets a little bit like they just get lost down a rabbit warren. So that's attention or awareness. It's at the top. It's the networking piece for the accountant, and it could be online networking or it could be in person. But there has been a helpful item that they have given away so that at that point, that other business owner that they've met, potential customer, is thinking, blimey, they're helpful. And isn't that just lovely to be able to give something away?
And they know their stuff.
And they know it. They're an expert in their field and they know what they're talking about. So the next part of that journey is when that business owner that's a potential customer of the accountant is then on that landing page. So they're on the website, they're on the blog, they might be able to, well, they can read all the information on the page, but there might be a YouTube video that might be 2 minutes long that also talks about around the same topic, something really helpful within that page. Within that page, there will also be, this would be amazing if they've really thought about this, some 5-star reviews from previous customers with photos of customers, so that when their potential customer is looking at this and they're thinking, well, they've been helpful, there's even a video, there's lots of information here, there's top tips, there's 300 people that have given 4.7 out of 5. You've got to think, well, they really must be doing a good job. So the call to action, when we think about back to the AIDA model, the 5-star reviews would come under desire. So that's getting to that next level. And then the action would be, within that page, there would be book a free call. Because at that point, all the accountant has had to do is prepare and turn up for a networking event. And the rest, once it's been done, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of work goes into that, collecting the reviews, creating a video that's then embedded. It's not something that happens overnight. But once that information has all been created and it's succinct, all the accountant needs to do is turn up at the networking and be prepared. And also then start to think about what other content can I give away, because self-assessment information would probably only be in January. That's going to be the most helpful time when people are thinking, I need to get it all sorted. So that's an example that I usually use. And I think the most important takeaway from that is that it's about linking the touch points. So once you know what your touch points are going to be, once you know which are the most succinct, it's about taking the potential customer on a journey that's really well crafted and process led and automated where possible so that they can help themselves as they need it. So I gave you 5 touch points there in that example for the accountant. There was networking, so online and in person. There was the website. There was some YouTube videos, a YouTube video embedded. There was the 5-star reviews using something like Trustpilot or Google. And then booking a free call with something like Calendly or other calendar appointment scheduling tools. Now, there's a reason why I talk about 5. So I'm going to take you on a little holiday, Lisa. I'm going to take you on safari. Would you like that?
I would love it.
Have you ever heard of the Big 5?
I have.
Have you? What do the Big 5 sometimes consist of?
They're animals. I know that because we talk about safari. So it's things like, it's the 5 animals that everyone wants to see when they're on safari.
Yeah. Can you give me an example?
Lions.
Yeah.
Rhinos.
Yeah.
Elephants, obviously. Yeah. Elephants, yep. That's 3. I'm struggling with the last 2.
Well, it's okay because there's so many. There's cheetahs, there's hippos, there's so many different things. And the thing is, with the Big 5, is that if you go on safari in one part of Africa and on safari in a different part, you're going to be given a different Big 5 because what they do is they know what is going to be in the area. So then they'll say to you, Lisa, look out for this, and this. because they know they're in the area. There's no point in them saying there's cheaters if they know there's no cheaters, because you're not going to see it. You're not going to tick it off. You're not going to feel like you've like done the dream. So the reason this is important when we talk about touch points is if you can think about how at your big 5 touch points in your business could be linked together, the most relevant, save you time and money by having things being automated as possible, and really just focus the majority of your time on those. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't do any other touch points. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there needs to be like this funnel model where everything feels very organised. You know exactly what you're doing. Things are being replicated, updated, tweaked, do some A/B testing, but generally you know exactly what's working and when. So, for example, PR, for the example in the accountant, PR wasn't in that list. But if they then won an award or something big happened, they did a great big, big charity thing, raise loads of money, then they're going to want to do some PR. So there can be things that come in, touch points that come in that are more like ad hoc, things that are relevant when they're relevant, spend the marketing money on them when they're needed, but it's not necessarily something that is always ongoing. So that was our little holiday, Lisa. Sorry, it was very quick. It lasted about 6 minutes.
It's possibly the closest I'm going to get to safari, so I'll take it.
So I did say that I would tell you a bit more about our journey at Touchpoints and how we've kind of done like a bit of an assessment really of a couple of years ago of what we were doing and what was working, what wasn't. And as I said at the beginning, I see a lot of customers trying really hard to keep up appearances on lots of social media channels, and it can be exhausting, can't it? And at one point we had 4 social media channels. We had a Facebook page, we had Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn. Okay. And I took a look at the stats and we kind of, we looked at it over a year period, and we was thinking, right, what's working, what isn't, what's creating engagement, likes, comments, shares, across all the different channel retweets and everything, what's working, what isn't. And we decided a few things. We decided to close the Facebook page because people weren't engaging. We also stopped posting onto Twitter because, well, mainly because it started to get a bit negative and a bit shouty and a bit not really our vibe. But we kept the profile open on Twitter and we changed the bio to say, hey, come and find us over on LinkedIn, which is where we hang out now, kind of message. And we put our bio link in Twitter was then our LinkedIn link. And then we did slow down on Instagram. There was a time where we kind of did stop and we did the whole lush thing where we were like, goodbye Instagram, because we thought, oh, do you know what? We're just not getting the engagement. But since then we've come back. We've been doing a little bit more.
Fallen back in love with it.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, I think when you like working with a channel, it becomes easier and it doesn't really feel like you're working hard on something. Plus, we're making everything for LinkedIn at the moment anyway. So once we're making it for LinkedIn, you can magic resize in Canva and it's ready to go for your Instagram. But we knew that LinkedIn is where we had the most value and where we engage with our target audience the most. So by removing Facebook, by pausing Twitter and by slowing down on Instagram, it just like really took the pressure off and it made us have that time to just refocus on what we were doing. So I challenge the listeners, if you're working across more than 3 social media channels, I challenge you to take a really good look at the analytics for each channel. Have a look at if you're running ads, how much are you spending? How much is that returning for you? We have got a episode coming up about how to track the ROI, the return on investment of your marketing. So wait for that one. What I want you to think about is like how many impressions, likes, comments, shares are you achieving on each channel? So do a little like report. You could have it in Excel or piece of paper, doesn't really matter. But then just think about how they compare to each other and you'll probably be really surprised about what's going on. And so my last question is to think, if you could drop one channel, what would that be? What can you remove from what you're doing to create a bigger impact for yourself? Now, there's lots of information over on a lunch and learn that I did for Enterprise Nation recently. We're going to put the link in the show notes, but the video on the Enterprise Nation website is called Find Your Target Audience and Customer Touchpoints. And I think it's about an hour long, might be half an hour, I think, lunch and learns. And All you need to do is head over to that link. If you don't already have an Enterprise Nation account, it is free to register, and then you can access all the Lunch and Learns. There's so much great, valuable information over on the Enterprise Nation site. Lisa's done some Lunch and Learns as well, so I think you're going to be talking about those in some of your upcoming episodes. And yeah, I think the main thing from this episode is to have a think about what's working, what isn't, and how you want to design the way that your customers hear about you, find out more information about you, build up that desire, and how you want them to take that action. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to follow us over at Scale Up Podcast on Instagram for behind the scenes footage and access to additional resources to help you master your own sales and marketing.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.